My grandparents raised me. My parents didn't need me as a child. My parents are divorced. My mother took my brother and left, writing a refusal. My father got married 2 times, safely, leaving me to his parents. So I grew up in another house under the supervision of my grandparents. Why am I writing this? When I was little, my grandmother had a wristwatch, the most ordinary. As a child, I loved trying them on. I often asked my grandmother to fasten them for me because she couldn't handle the fastener herself. Then, when I grew up, my grandfather gave me a similar watch with the same clasp. They're still there, but I don't wear them anymore. My grandparents died a long time ago. I grew up. I have children. My youngest daughter is 3 years old. Somehow I found my watch in the box, both my grandmother's and mine. My daughter, of course, took them to play. I didn't see anything wrong with that. Wow. She ran up to me in the kitchen and asked me to fasten the clasp, which she could not cope with, and she didn't choose my watch, but her grandmother's. When I was fastening them on her handle, she suddenly raised her head, looked intently into my eyes, and asked, "Do you remember how I used to fasten them for you when you were little?" I was speechless and just asked what. To which she, embarrassed, did not answer anything. I asked her to repeat what she said. She said with some irritation, "I used to put them on for you when you were little." I started to question her in detail, but she broke away and ran away to play. Friends, I do not know how or what. After that, I sat and thought. My husband, who was present at the conversation, asked, "And how long after her grandmother's death was she born?" I was stunned and thought about it. And that's what came to my mind. My grandfather died and my son was born. My grandmother died and my daughter was born. Even outwardly, they are similar. My son is blonde with gray eyes, and he is already catching up with me in height, and he's 10 years old. That was my grandfather, the only one in the family who was tall. My son delves into everything, just like my grandfather. And he was a jack of all trades. My daughter is dark-haired with brown eyes. She's my copy. And when I was little, everyone said that I was a copy of my grandmother. I love my children, no matter what. It's just that the idea of reincarnation is in the past or something like that. What do you think about this? Our children have never been friends with phones. They always kept them turned off. It was difficult to get through. Therefore, in the hallway we hung an old Nokia with a battery that holds a charge for about a week and with a killer melody. One day we went south, and in the hallway I joked, "Brownie, we're leaving, but we'll be back. Wait for us if you're mad, call." At the end of the vacation, we went to the sea for 21 days. We didn't bring our phones with us so they wouldn't be tracked. I'm coming back. There's a missed call from home on my phone. A lot of beeps. I don't understand. The home phone was not turned off. It did not charge for a long time before the trip. I called back to the specified phone number. The call, of course, is unavailable. The next day, the story repeats. 2 missed calls with an interval of 15 minutes. There is no one to call from home. No one has the keys. We arrived home. The phone is turned off, charged, and there are no outgoing calls to mine on the list. The lights are on at home. At that time, we had a ceiling chandelier, a panel that could be turned on using a remote control. On the day the calls started, there was a strong thunderstorm with wind. The electricity went out, but the main switch turned off the chandelier. It is unclear how it turned on. Maybe it was a problem during the calls. The operator dialed the number, but nothing else happened. Or Brownie got worried. Trouble has come to my family. The trouble is evil, cruel, heartless, but about everything in order. My son was born a healthy boy. Until the age of 6, he was an active, cheerful, quick-witted, and cheerfully smiling child. However, like most children his age, he was the same as most other children his age. Everything is like everyone else's kindergarten, yard games. By this time, my son was already reading and counting well. How could I have thought then that soon we would have to feel hopeless and terrible pain, which is not limited and cannot be controlled, and go through trials that I would not wish on anyone in the world? On the day my son suffered the tragedy, my husband and I were out of town. The son stayed with his grandmother. What exactly happened that day, Grandma does not remember, a lapse in memory. When she came to, she found her grandson lifeless. Fortunately, there was a doctor in the next apartment who treated sick children. Before the ambulance arrived, he performed artificial respiration on my boy. He spent the whole night in intensive care on artificial ventilation. I cried on a bench under the windows of the intensive care unit and asked God to save my son. In the morning, my son started breathing on his own. The doctors succeeded. I was shocked when I saw my child in the hospital with a bunch of tubes. My son's treatment and recovery has been very long and difficult. There were different assumptions about what happened. The blood tests and injuries were reviewed, but the doctors did not come to a single decision. The predictions for the future were frightening. The doctors said that my child was dead, that he would always remain a plant. They also said that his brain was damaged, so his movements, consciousness, and mental activity could be disrupted. There were even offers to give up your son, referring to the fact that you were still young. You're going to have another child. Another child. How can one child be replaced by another? I love my son immensely. He is the meaning of my life, my blood. These predictions caused a protest in my soul. I couldn't give up on my son. The doctors were looking for a solution. There was no such case in their practice. During the next therapy session, my boy's heart stopped. And again, tears and prayers for salvation, and a miracle happened. My son is back. He was 6 years old. Later, you will understand why this miracle happened. From that moment on, the son began to recover. We studied a lot, learned everything all over again, walking, talking, holding a spoon, writing with a pen. It wasn't difficult for me. It's like I've grown wings. My son was with me, alive. My son went to kindergarten, then to school. My son and I talked a lot. When he was 9 years old, he said he remembered an incident in the hospital. He saw how the doctors touched him, how he cried and called the name of the nurse who gave him the injection. She was the only one who coped with this injection due to her high muscle tone. I was shocked. How could a 6-year-old child in a coma see and remember this? I didn't tell them so as not to hurt them. He said he saw everything from above, that it was good up there. Then a voice told him to come back, and he came back. When I took a deep breath, I asked my son why he came back if it was good there. "I didn't want to leave you alone, my boy," replied to me. Isn't this a miracle? He's not the same as before, but I am grateful to God for my son. Despite this, he is alive. He walks, but slowly, very slowly, calculating, resourceful, witty, quick-witted, very smart. He also teaches me wisdom. One day I asked him, "Why don't you want to go for a walk? Are you embarrassed by your disability?" "No," my son replied to me. "People with disabilities are drunkards and people with substance use disorders, but now I just walk slowly, and now I don't want to walk." Here is a story from the words of the child's mother, who became disabled as a child. Of course, you can write entire chapters of the book for each paragraph of my narration. This is a short story about a lifetime. Now my son is an adult. He graduated from school successfully, loves us, and this wonderful world. He is not offended. He is not upset. He does not think he is a victim. He just keeps living and exploring the world. And we love him very much. I am eternally grateful to God for bringing my son back to life. I understood a lot. What matters is not what happens to us, but how we deal with it and how we get out of it. I am very grateful to those who helped me during a difficult time for my family. And yet God is closer than we think he is near. My wife asked me to take my son for a walk in the playground on a day off. I'll tell you straight out, 1 hour with this ridiculous man is worth 10 to me. But don't rush to judge. I'm not a bad father. I'm just like that. I called my friend and, in order not to get bored, invited him to take a walk with us. Max, that's my friend's name, gladly agreed, and since we live opposite each other, we agreed to meet right in the courtyard. When my son and I went outside, there was a body lying on the playground. This body is smelly, dirty, in its own urine. What would you do in my place? I did the same thing. I took out my cell phone and had already dialed 112 when Max's voice rang out behind me. "Who are you calling?" "Yes, over there. Do you see the body? I want to take it away." "Alex, what are you doing?" "This is Peter, his own, from the 5th entrance." I have known Peter since childhood. He worked or served in the patrol and patrol service of the traffic police as a battalion commander. Peter reminded me of a good family man. He had 2 daughters and even a grandson. He had nothing in common with this man, who was lying in his own vomit. "You, Max. What kind of hug is this from Peter?" Peter looks like a police officer, but he's a... Wait, Alex, are you driving or what? Are you completely ridiculous? I looked at my friend incredulously. Frank, my son, hugged me when he saw a strange uncle on the playground. He didn't want to play, but then he turned around and held out his little hands, asking me to take him with me. You don't know what. he asked. Peter's whole family is extinct. Everything: wife, children, grandson, even a dog, and that too. How so? Well, I really don't know the details, but I heard from my father that Peter told him. In order not to stand on the playground, the three of us decided to take a walk to the park. But I called 112, calling for an ambulance. In short, Alex, it was like this in 2015, even with this body. As you said, everything was still fine. But on one of his shifts, as Dad told me, he stopped a taxi car. The taxi driver was an older grandfather who was arrested by the bailiff service. Peter thinks Grandpa didn't know about it. Peter got drunk for some reason, but I thought Grandpa was working on his own. It doesn't really matter. Peter wrote the protocol, even though his grandfather begged him not to do it. They say his son is ill. His leg was cut off in Chechnya. He has a small pension. His wife recently died, and now he does not have $200 for a fine. Take this, at least. To which Peter cut him off. Keep your cooking business to yourself. And he took the driver's license and drew up a protocol. Grandpa wilted. Well, when it came to court and Peter was there, our most humane court decided to deprive him of his driver's license for 1 year and impose a fine of $500 for illegal business activities. And neither the son with disabilities nor the recent death of his wife helped. I do not know what or how, but Dad says that Peter was amused. Then they say, "There you are, you old fart." And when it was over, Grandpa went up to Peter and told him, "Make sure you don't end up at the bottom yourself when you pull everyone down with you." And the old man's eyes were unkind as Peter said, "Oh, unkind." A week later, his wife, Aunt Sarah, fell ill. You have to remember her. She was very thin and she had almost no hair. She burned down quickly, and no one could figure out what was wrong with her. They were running around. They took her to Germany, Turkey, and even Israel, and Peter loved her very much. But nothing helped, and imagine, 6 months later she was gone. A few months later, the first daughter and her husband died in a car accident. Everyone who was there, including the grandson, was there too. The last daughter, a good student and graduate of a medical college, suddenly started taking drugs and died of an overdose. She was probably 26 years old. Well, something hurt the dog. That's how Peter lost everything. He says he found that grandfather and tells him. They say, "What the hell is this?" And that grandfather replied that Peter didn't care about his culinary problems. That's all I said. I didn't even know. Since you got married, nothing bothers you except your family, my friend chuckled.